Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Wynwood Buddhist Temple's virtual Dharma service. We'll begin the service, as usual, with the chanting of the Vandana and Tisarana. This is found on page 7 of your red service book. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sammasambuddhassa. Homage to him, the exalted one, the enlightened one, the supremely awakened one. Buddham saranam gacchami, Dhammam saranam gacchami, Sangham saranam gacchami. I go to the Buddha for guidance. I go to the Dharma for guidance. I go to the Sangha for guidance. Namo Amida Butsu, Namanda Butsu, Namanda Butsu. The recitation for today is Shinshu Pledge 2. This is found on page 6 of the red service book. Entrusting in the vow of the Buddha and reciting the sacred name, I shall proceed through the journey of life with strength and joy. Revering the light of the Buddha and reflecting upon my imperfect self, I shall strive to live a life of gratitude. Following the teachings of the Buddha and discerning the right path, I shall spread the true Dharma. Rejoicing in the compassion of the Buddha, respecting and aiding others, I shall do my best to work towards the welfare of society. Namo Amida Butsu, Namanda Butsu. The sutra for today is Juseige. Juseige is found on page 54 of the red service book, and this is followed by the Dharma talk. Namanda, 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 Namanda. Agon shosengan ishimujo no shigang vumanzok seifujo shogan gao muryoko fuidai seshu Fusai Shobingu Seifu Joshoga Gashi Jobundo Myosho Jojipo Kukyo Mishomong Seifu Joshoga Diyakujing shonen Joe shumongyo Shigamu jodo Isho tenningshi Jenmeki endaiko Fusho musaido Shōjō sankumyo Kōsai shūyaku na 가이치에겐 메시공모왕 해석쇼악도 저단산슈몽 고소조만속 니어로지뽀 니지간 셔저키 땡공프겐 이슈카이호소 고세그도크호 조다이슈저 세포시시그 그요이사이브 그석그슈도크홍 간내신조만 독구이상가요 뇨büt무게시 쓰단미푸쇼 강나크에릭 도시사이쇼송 시간약고가 다이생오칸도 고그쇼테닝 도징묘케 남만다우. Well, good morning once again, everyone, and welcome to the Wynwood Buddhist Temple's virtual Dharma service. You know, we had all hoped by this time that the pandemic would have waned and it would be once again open after a long 19 months, but that's not the case. However, on Friday, Governor Ige sort of opened up things just a little bit, but enough because the COVID cases have been going down. So as a result then, we were able to, some of us anyway, able to go to some sporting events, go to outdoor services and so forth, weddings and things like that. So it's getting better and better. So with all of your help, it'll get much better in a few weeks. So just hang in there. We'll get to a better place soon. Well, this past Tuesday was what you might call the mother of all Tuesdays, one that I wish to forget. Let me tell you what happened. It might help you as well. I got a phone call from supposedly a fellow from Amazon asking if I had purchased an iPhone for $350. And if not, if I knew the person on the invoice that purchased it. I said that no, I did not recognize that person. Then he said that he would refund the money to me, but he couldn't do it over the internet. That was a red flag, but I went along with it for a while. He then told me that he would do it by direct deposit to my checking account, another red flag. So I told him that, oh, I'm not going to give you my account number. So then he opened up my personal bank account, actually. And I asked him, how did you do that? How did you do that? He said, well, you know, when you bought things from Amazon in the past, you wrote the name of the bank. That I know I didn't do. But I still played along with this. Anyway, he said to please put the figure 350 on the return slip that he showed. So I did that. Soon afterwards, he said, oh, you put in the wrong amount. He said, you put in $3,500 instead of $350. So now they have to reimburse me $3,000. They have to reimburse me $3,000, they said. I already knew something was wrong, but I continued on with it. It even showed that $3,500 was deposited into my checking account. He said, I'm going to refund you, so $3,500 you're going to back into your checking account, and I saw that. So now he said that he could not correct the error, so I would have to go to the bank and withdraw $3,000 in cash, and then go to Target and purchase 30 $100 gift cards. Scratch the back of the card and give him the codes. I almost burst out laughing, but I didn't. So I asked him if he was going to remain on the line while I get in my car, go to the bank, get the cash, run over to Target, purchase the gift cards, and give him the codes. He said, yeah, I'll wait on the phone. So I said, okay. In the meantime, I called my IT guy because I knew that my computer was compromised. So then I immediately hung up the phone and had the IT guy work on my computer in the meantime. I went to the bank to close my checking and savings accounts. I found out that he actually transferred, he did make a transfer, but he transferred $3,500 from my savings to the checking. So then I closed both accounts and made new ones. Not to mention that I had to close all the automatic payments that was going to happen. It was quite a harrowing day. I had to call Social Security and everything. So it was a harrowing day. So I tell you, please be careful. Maybe I should have saved the story for a future Dharma message, but I couldn't wait to tell you this story. So anyway, let's put our hands together in reverence as I read these words. The person burdened with extreme obstructions should simply say the name. Although I too am within Amida's grasp, passions obstruct my eyes and I cannot see the light. Nevertheless, great compassion is untiring and illumines me always. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda Butsu. How many of you have seen these two Chinese characters? The Chinese reading on the one on the left is Shou, and the one on the right is read as Xing. The left part of Shou is read in Japanese as Koromo, or clothing, I am told, and the right part is read as Katana, or cut. Thus, to cut cloth or to make clothes. So this eventually came to mean to set about doing something as well as new and therefore for the first time. Shin, on the other hand, is read as kokoro in Japanese, and that means heart or feelings or mind. So when you read Shoshin, it means the beginner's mind. So then, what is this beginner's mind that we're talking about? Reverend Haneda of the Maeda Center in Berkeley refers to the beginner's mind as Shinjing. Shinjing is awakening or bodhi in Sanskrit. Shinran Shonin describes Shinjing as the same as birth in the Pure Land or birth in the sphere of the Dharma. Sphere of the Dharma. This sphere is the same as that of Shakyamuni's third Dharma mark, which is the concept of selflessness or the cured condition. The other two being that of difficulty or suffering in life and the truth of impermanence. It refers to an open attitude that allows us to examine our thoughts honestly. In this process of self-examination, we come to a clearer understanding of who we really are. However, this kind of attitude or mind does not come automatically. In fact, our tendency is to have the opposite kind of mind, a closed mind, a mind that thinks one has all the answers. It is what is called as the ego mind, or the mind of having an inflated sense of our own self-importance. As long as our ego is in force, we will continue to have this kind of closed or skewed mind. When I was a very young man, just entering into my profession, my ego was so self-inflated that you cannot imagine. Whenever I attended these continuing ed classes, I used to see these much older men and women discussing whatever they were discussing, and thought to myself that these people were so far removed from their formal education years that they could not possibly know what they were talking about. That whatever opinions that they may have held were so antiquated that they lived in the dark ages. Only I knew what was what, because I came from the best educational institution in the world, and that I knew the latest. After all, I read the journals, and they probably don't do that. If they did, they probably didn't understand what they were reading anyway. They didn't even use the correct terminology. Well, now I'm the older guy. And while I was still actively going to continuing ed classes at that time, well, I recently gave up my license. I shuddered to think what the younger practitioners were thinking when they saw me walk in the door of the lecture hall. I wonder if they were thinking the same thing I did years ago. Has humankind changed that much that they have different ecosystems than I did? I doubt that. Now, after all these years, I finally learned what I should have known all along, and I'm ashamed of myself for thinking the way I did. I wish I could see those people again and thank them for leading the way. They were actually leading the way for us younger ones. It must not have been easy for them. I know their parents made a lot of sacrifices for them. Just as an aside, back then when they were young, they could not belong to the Territorial Hawaii Dental Association. So they formed their own, what's called the Japanese Dental Society. So they would either fly in or ship in lecturers from the mainland for a week at a time. But by the time I came back, though, it was just a social club with once-a-year gatherings, including picnics at Ala Moana Beach Park, that was very similar in content to the once popular Kenjin Kai picnics that we used to have when I was a young boy. Do you remember those? I think many of you still remember those days with the rice bag and three-legged races and so forth, shaved ice. By that time, members included people from all ethnic backgrounds. So, needless to say, the Japanese Dental Society does not exist anymore. In one of the seminars that I attended, the speaker talked about tradition and creativity. He said that tradition means honoring past values and focusing on the past. It is essentially passive. Creativity, though, on the other hand, means destruction of past values and creating new ones, focusing on the future. It is active. However, the speaker said that we cannot be just creative, that ultimately we need both. A deep respect for tradition is the only true basis for creativity, he said. This means the serious study of the masters of the tradition that have come before us. Then, from our deep appreciation of their greatness, our own creativity can flow naturally. Creativity comes naturally through learning. One of the greatest examples of this relationship between tradition and creativity is Shinran Shonin. In his landmark work, the Kyogyo Shinjo, it is said that 90% of it comes from quotes or other teachers and other masters. Out of the tradition, he created what is known today as the Jodo Shinshu tradition, or Shin Buddhism. So the beginner's mind means that we must practice remaining open to understanding another's belief and opinion, even while disagreeing with it. This also means that we must at times be willing to hear with an open mind about what someone else may consider important, while we may find the same thing irrelevant or silly. We need to practice until we perfect the so-called ego-checking process that moves toward a self-awareness of ourselves. This ego mind, while in control of our lives, thinks that it has all the answers, and we experience life through the lens of our own personal bias, which is ever so present. This can be a cause of much personal pain and suffering. By being in and nurturing the beginner's mind, we can become aware of the process of our skewed thinking and observe its influence in all aspects of our life. Chris Richardson, the president of the Lay Association of Hawaii, in his opening message a couple of weeks ago, advised all to let it go, he says. But by that, he didn't mean in the sense of abandoning or letting things fall into neglect or ignoring things. But he meant to let it come. What he meant was not to have negative emotions affect our daily lives. The Buddha, in his very first sermon on the Four Noble Truths, taught that life does not always go according to our wishes. That self-centeredness, ignorance, and clinging to illusions cause suffering. The state of absolute peace and bliss called nirvana exists. That the way to nirvana is the eightfold path of right understanding, right conduct, right speech, right thought, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right meditation. Dr. Haneda puts it this way, that being a student is the only goal, the highest goal in Buddhism. If we have the beginner's mind, we can humbly take responsibility for our lives. Our failures and transgressions can actually turn out to be great teachers. How often have we talked about this? How often have we experienced this ourselves? In Buddhism, this is called Hoben or Upaya, or skillful means of the Buddha that leads to the realization of what and who we really are. So we must come to the realization of the shortness of our lives and its lesson on impermanency. The shortness of our lives is such an obvious fact, but it is one that we overlook the most. If we awaken to our beginner's mind, we will undoubtedly question the meaning of our lives. It was only a short time ago when my granddaughter was a very young child, and how I used to enjoy cuddling with her, watching her grow throughout her school years here in Honolulu, watching her softball games while in high school and so forth. Now she has graduated and just 2 weeks ago left Hawaii to attend college on the mainland USA. And though I will miss her, I do, it is all for her personal growth. It was never about me. Thank you all for listening. Let's put our hands together as I read Renyo Shonin's Gobunsho entitled The Tradition of Shinran Shonin, or as it is called, Shonin Ishiryu no Sho in the original Japanese version. What is taught in the tradition of Shinran Shonin is that the entrusting heart is essential. For when we abandon various practices and take refuge in Amida with singleness of heart, our birth in the Pure Land is settled by the Buddha through the inconceivable vow power. The state we thus attain is described as, with awakening of a single thought of entrusting, we join those who are in the stage of the truly settled. Recitation of the Nembutsu thereafter should be understood to be the Nembutsu as an expression of gratitude for the Tathagata's benevolence for settling our birth in the Pure Land. Humbly and respectfully, Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda. The gatha for today is Flying Free, and this is followed by the Nembutsu.
By the sea.
Namo Amida. Namo Amida. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida. Namo Amida Butsu. Do not seek to know the Buddha by his form and attributes, for neither the form nor attributes are the real Buddha. The true Buddha is enlightenment itself. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Namanda Butsu. This concludes the service for today. I want to thank all of you for attending this service, and we hope to see you again next Sunday at 9 a.m. Thank you, and be well. Goodbye.